Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. Tomorrow is a massive day. The Bad Batch Season 3 Episode 9 The Harbinger, and Jennifer Corbett, the showrunner, has been teasing that we're probably going to see the return of Asajj Ventress. This could be the week. I'm very excited to break down tomorrow's video, but today we're going to be talking more about the Acolyte. I've got a few more thoughts. I know we've been discussing it in depth. It is the next live-action Star Wars series on June 4th. I want to address a question I saw on social media in response to my last video, which discussed how Leslye Headland's series should address certain questions, which itself was more contentious than I thought. I guess not everyone is too bothered about canon and continuity, but I think a lot of these questions are valid, and it's worth having these discussions. I think theories and speculation are a lot of fun, and one aspect I've seen mentioned is the role that Yoda might play if, and it's a big if, he appears in the show. We know he plays a significant role in the High Republic, and he's been part of several High Republic stories both in the novels and the comics, and also Young Jedi adventures. More on this later, but considering the Acolyte promises to answer some pre-Phantom Menace fan queries, one of them, in light of this being a Sith show, is how much does Yoda know about the Sith? Was he playing coy in the Phantom Menace when Ki-Adi-Mundi asserts the Sith have been extinct for a millennium? He does look over to Mace Windu as if he knows something. And on top of this, later in the movie at Qui-Gon's funeral, Yoda says, "Always two there are, a master and an apprentice. No more, no less." George Lucas wanted us, the audience, to be aware of the fact that Palpatine, the master of the presumed dead Maul, until the Clone Wars of course, was right under the Jedi's noses, undetected. The Phantom Menace was right there. Now by the time of the Clone Wars Season 6, Yoda recognized Darth Bane. In the final arc of the 6th season, he meets his ghost. However, Yoda knows Bane created the Rule of Two, and according to Canon, the Jedi-Sith Wars ended about 200 years before Yoda was inducted into the Jedi Order in the first place. Additionally, Bane created the Rule of Two after the Sith went into hiding. So how did Yoda know about this? The answer in the expanded universe is very interesting. The Jedi knew thanks to a certain Kib Jeen, a Jedi Padawan who almost became a knight. He and his master were sent to investigate a dark side nexus, which turned out to be a temple of the Sith, one which allured Jeen to the dark side. He flew into a rage and killed his master. He then spent 7 years as a dark Jedi, unifying the pirates and criminal gangs of a star system, and embarking on a murderous crusade. During this time, he learned of the Sith's survival and continued existence in the shadows, as well as their master-apprentice dynamic. In his final confrontation, a pair of Jedi destroyed his ship, and his final transmission to the Jedi revealed the Rule of Two. This was spread across the Order, but for the longest time the Jedi dismissed his words as delusions of a dying madman, one who turned to the dark. But as the dark side grew stronger and clouded the Jedi's foresight, they began to believe he told them the truth. And that's probably why by the time of the Phantom Menace, and also earlier in the High Republic, Yoda knew about this. But as I should clarify, this story is not canon, so the Acolyte in Disney canon could rewrite this and give us a new version of events, how Yoda knew so much about the Sith. And after the Jedi confrontation in this series, is there a cover-up? Were the Jedi in denial? Were they in such disbelief that this could in any way be a Sith? Another theory I've seen indicates that Yoda is so old that many centuries ago, his master told him stories of the Sith. His master would have been closer to the time of Bane, and he must have heard various stories and passed them on. And approaching the time of Episode 1, Yoda realized they were true. It could be as simple as that. It doesn't need a grandiose or complicated explanation. Nonetheless, it's a fascinating question, and even if it's very brief, you have to imagine Yoda has to appear in this show, and I don't think some fans realize just how important he is to this time period. Let me explain. The Acolyte takes place years after the High Republic books, almost a century after Phase 3, and that means the Disney Plus show bridges the gap between the Yoda we see in those books, in the Young Jedi Adventures series, and how we see him in the prequel trilogy just before the fall of the Jedi Order. So I think if the Acolyte is going to show us Jedi at their worst, we have to see some of the arrogance and maybe blinded nature in this age of prosperity from both Jedi Master Yoda and other masters at this time. In the books, at the spry age of 664, Yoda remembers when the Nihil came out of the Outer Rim, hiding to begin their rampage on the galaxy. Seeing as this is the golden age of the Jedi, These marauders shouldn't have had a chance against Yoda and other Jedi Masters during the High Republic. They just saved tens of millions in the Great Disaster, so nothing could stop them. Yoda was just out here with his group of Padawans wrecking shop. But then, as I say, the unthinkable. He disappeared and wasn't around while the Nihil put their stamp on the galaxy, destroying Starlight Beacon, the Republic's de facto symbol of life and light. Yoda during this time period is held in the highest esteem. His insight was invaluable, but Yoda is always first to put the onus on those he's trying to impart wisdom on. More than anything, he's a teacher, which is why it would be amazing to see him in the Acolyte. But you also have to figure, to some degree, his status is above the investigation by Jedi Master Sol, Yord, Jeki, and those investigating the series of murders by the assassin May. Maybe Yoda doesn't find out about the intricate details of the mission until the end, if he ever does. Maybe most of the Jedi meets their end. We know Master Indara does. Another interesting aspect of Yoda during this time is the fact the dark side wasn't mentioned too much in High Republic books. Part of that is because the Order is more welcoming to a wider worldview of the Force, but that changed in Phase 3. Yoda had a secret mission of his own, when an army of Jedi-killing creatures known as the Nameless were unveiled. And his vague but main message was that we must look to the secrets of the past. And maybe Yoda provides us some insight into what he knows about the Sith in the Acolyte. The Acolyte seems like it's going to be a very unique entry into the Star Wars canon, and not just for new characters but familiar ones too. Leslye Headland recently told IGN she wants to ask hard questions. She wants to change and challenge her understanding of Jedi and Sith, and that, in and of itself, could have widespread ramifications. Essentially, because she wants to give the Sith the benefit of the doubt, this show could severely undercut our understanding of the goodness of the Jedi during the Age of the Republic, and the way we perceive Yoda himself could be changed. She says, quote, "I think you're seeing the Jedi when they're this very large institution, a so-called benevolent one, but they're closer to how we see them in the Phantom Menace than any other time period, so there will be connections." And she says, "This is why a show based on the quote good guys is interesting to me. In that era, what does the underdog even look like, even if they're the bad guy?" But what do you guys think? Are there questions you have that you want this show to answer? Or are you just along for the ride and just going to take it as it comes? Nonetheless, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.